In this module, we will talk about how to configure the web control for ENS. In this module, we will learn how to identify the purpose of the web control module. We will identify the key features that the web control provides. We will also identify the different policies available for the web control as well as their default settings. And then we will see how we configure the web control policies to meet our customer needs. The key features of the web control is the fact that we have this automatic scanning of any downloading of files, because you have the fact that our threat prevention module will work together with the web control to provide you this enhanced protection and visibility of any files that are being downloaded from the web by automatically scanning those files. We also have a color-coded safety ratings while people are browsing and searching the websites, including HTTP and HTTPS. We also have a quick access to the site details, and we can do access control for our end users based on the web category. The supported browsers that we support currently is Microsoft Internet Explorer 11. We also support Google Chrome, the current version, but just understand Chrome does not support the show balloon option, and it may not work with a new update. We support the current version of Mozilla Firefox, and we also support the Mozilla Firefox ESR, the Extended Support Release, the current version and also the previous version. The one thing the web control does not support is Microsoft Edge. The Firefox web control will also enable the extension automatically, and it will enable it 5 minutes after you install it. And then every 30 minutes it will actually check the status and re-enable it if it's been disabled by the user. But just be sure to always check the KB article KB 82761 to verify if the supported browsers have ever changed. With Active Directory, you can configure the group policy so that you can make sure that you can force the enabling of the web control within the browsers. For the Internet Explorer, be sure that you see on their website the Managing Browser Settings and Group Policy tools. What you have to do is you have to have the CLSID for the web control browser helper object and the web control toolbar. For Chrome, see the Google the Set Chrome Policies for Devices and understand the APPID for web control is this right here, and it is case sensitive. The location where the extension is hosted is the list that we have right on this particular screen. How the file downloads are scanned is within this figure. You'll see first off the user tries to download the file. The web control will check the rating for the URL. If the rating allows the file to be downloaded, then what we'll do is we'll look at the GTI file reputation and then see whether or not if the rating allows the file to be downloaded. Note that if the ratings do not allow the file to be downloaded, we will not download that file. We're going to continue on the next page. When a user browses to a website, you'll have a color-coded button that will be in the browser. The color of the button will correspond to the safety rating for the site. If you'll notice, the safety rating applies to only HTTP and HTTPS protocol URLs only. The location of where this button exists depends on the type of browser. If it's Internet Explorer, it's going to be in the web control toolbar. If it's Firefox, it's going to be in the right corner of the Firefox toolbar, and in Chrome it will be in the address bar. What you will see is, depending on the color, you'll see that what is the type of rating. You'll see green background, it's more secure. If it has green background with a white shield, it's still safe. Yellow background might have some issues. Red background have some very serious issues. Gray background, we actually don't have a rating available for that particular URL. An orange background means you had a communication error with our GTI server. And we will continue for more of the color-coded safety buttons on the next slide. To continue with the color-coded safety buttons, you'll see if it's a blue background, then we have not queried that site. And it's either because it's an internal site or it's a part of the private IP address range. The black background, this is a site known for phishing. The white background is we're allowing it. And light gray and grayed out means web control is disabled. The user will also see some color-coded safety icons while they're searching. The green will let you know that we don't have any significant problems. Yellow, we do have some issues. For example, the site tried to change the tester's browser defaults. They had some pop-ups. They might have sent the tester a significant amount of non-spam email. Red indicates that our test revealed serious issues and you need to consider carefully before you access this site. And a good example is the site sent a lot of spam email to the testers or bundled adware with a particular download. If it's white with a red /, then it is configured to block that site. If you see a question mark, then the site is unrated. We have some site reports that you can look at the threat details of your different websites. The site reports are delivered from our Mcafee GTI rating server, and they provide this different types of information. First off, you'll have an overview that will give you what the overall rating is determined from, and that has to do with what is the website email and download practices. We've examined the website itself, and we notice that it engages in annoying practices such as excessive pop-ups or requests to change the home page. Also an analysis of online affiliations with other suspicious sites, and feedback from our own threat intelligence services. Online affiliations shows how aggressively the site tries to get users to go to other sites that are flagged with a red rating. Suspicious sites often associate with other suspicious sites. The primary purpose of this feeder site is to get you to visit this suspicious site. A site can receive a red warning or rating if, for example, it links too aggressively to these other sites. In this case, web control considers the site red by association. The web spam test, we show an overall rating for website email practices based on the test results. Site ratings are based on how much email we receive after entering an address on the site and how much the email looks like spam. If either measure is higher than what is considered acceptable, Mcafee rates the site yellow. If both measures are high and one looks egregious, the site is rated red. The download test shows an overall rating about the impact of the site's downloadable software had on test computers, based on the test results. Red flags indicate sites with virus-infected downloads or to sites that add unrelated software considered to be adware or spyware. The rating also considers the network servers that a downloaded program contacts during the operation and any modifications to the browser settings or computer registry files. This figure shows an example of a site report. If you will notice, look at the web reputation rating. So this one actually shows you that it is a minimal risk. The workflow for the web control configuration is access the policy catalog and select the option for endpoint security web control. You can enable and configure the general settings within the options policy. Then you specify the sites and the site patterns to block or allow, and that would be your block and allow list policy. Define the actions to take for rated sites and web content categories. That would be our content actions policy. And then you can customize the access messages in explanation. This would be our enforcement messaging policy. And then we can also block the use of specific browsers, which would be the browser control policy. Just understand you can configure these policies in any order. So we're going to start off with the web control options policy. In the web control product, we have the ability to define user-based policies. The user-based policy will supersede the system policy that is assigned in the system tree to a particular system. The idea is you can define these policies that are enforced by defining a Mcafee policy orchestrator policy assignment rules that has to do with the group or user account from LDAP. Basically, With these rules, they are enforced on the client system when the user logs on, regardless of where the machine exists in the EPO group. User-based policies are enforced when the user has a matching assignment rule and they log on to the client system on the console. The system-based policies will be enforced if 2 or more users log onto the system. Just always understand the policy assignment rules take precedence over the policies defined in the system tree. Basically, these policies are cached during every agent-to-server communication interval, and the agent will keep a record of the users who log onto the network. You might actually have a slight delay upon first logon. The Web Control Options policy defines the general settings for web control. Ideally, you can go in and use, as we've done before, the Mcafee default, which is a read-only policy, or the My Default, which is a duplicate of the Mcafee default, and you can edit that policy. Or you can duplicate and create your own policy from one of these. Features that we will be talking about is the web control, where you can disable or enable and specify interface controls for the user, the event logging as to what content we want to log, our action enforcement, where we can specify the actions for the sites that GTI has not yet readied, as well as control access to the sites, pages, and downloads. Also, you can set your exclusions for specific IP addresses, and our secure search, where we can automatically block malicious sites in search results based on their safety rating. The web control and the web control interlocked options are, first off, that you can enable the web control. If you disable this option, you will disable all policy enforcement having to do with the web control, including all the browser control policies. The option to prevent the users from uninstalling or disabling the browser plugin, this is for Windows only, is enabled by default. This protects the web control browser plugin. By enabling this option, you will prevent your users from disabling the web control add-on in the Internet Explorer browser. To block the Internet Explorer users from using in-private browsing in the EXTOF switch, enable this option and the self-protection in the common module. The web control integrates with self-protection to protect itself from being uninstalled or changed. Before configuring these settings, make sure that the self-protection in the common module is enabled on all the managed systems. If an Internet Explorer user disables the web control add-on, it cannot be re-enabled from Mcafee EPO. It must be re-enabled from the browser. The other option, hide the toolbar on the client browser, is where it would actually hide it on the browser without disabling its functionality. This is disabled by default. Web Control Interlock for Windows only disables the web control so that it ignores the rating and enforcement actions when a web gateway appliance is detected on the network. This is disabled by default. If you have this option enabled, the client system uses the web gateway to enforce the network traffic rather than the web control. If the client system is using the web gateway to enforce the network traffic, then the web control browser controls are disabled, and the endpoint security client indicates that the web control is disabled because the web gateway appliance is detected. So the web gateway interlock feature applies only to environments where our Mcafee web gateway has been integrated with EPO. So when enabled, ENS stands down from the enforcement and site rating operations if it detects your organization already enforces traffic through the web gateway. Just understand, web gateway is purchased and deployed separately. So the best practice is only disable the web control to perform tests or troubleshoot network connection problems. Make sure to re-enable the web control when you are done. Use one of these methods to configure web control to detect a web gateway. Use your organization's default gateway. It will compare the client's default gateway IP address with the organization's gateway IP address specified in the policy. If it matches, the default gateway enforces the network traffic rather than web control. You have the option to detect web gateway enforcement. What it does is web control tries to contact our http://gateway.siteadvisor.com. If the web control cannot retrieve the content from this site, a web gateway enforces the network traffic rather than web control. Your web gateway must block the http://gateway.siteadvisor.com. Another option is specify an internal landmark to use. If the web control resolves the specified DNS name or IP addresses, it does not perform a rating or enforcement actions. Best practice, be sure to enter both a DNS name and IP addresses. If you enter the DNS name, web control performs a DNS query. It doesn't check the local cache on the host name. If at least one IP address is detected, web control does not perform rating or enforcement actions. If you enter in the IP addresses, the web control resolves the name for each address. If at least one valid host name is detected, the web control stops processing and does not perform rating or enforcement actions. If you enter both a DNS name and an IP address, web control performs a DNS query on the DNS hostname, checks the result against the specified IP addresses. If it detects a match, once again, web control does not perform rating or enforcement actions. How the web control and Mcafee client proxy work together: you can configure the web control to be disabled when it detects that a Mcafee client proxy is present and it is in redirection mode. For the web control to be disabled, the client system must meet the client proxy criteria set in your MCP policy settings. The web control remains enabled unless both of the following are true. The disable if Mcafee client proxy is detected option is selected. If this option is not selected, the web control remains enabled even if the client proxy is redirecting. The other is client proxy is redirecting, and this is where if the client proxy is installed but not redirecting for some reason, such as a network or license issues, then web control is enabled. When the web control is configured to be disabled when client proxy is redirecting, then when the system is outside the internal network, web control is disabled and the client proxy redirects the network traffic. When the client system moves from outside to inside the internal network, the client proxy stops redirecting and the web control is re-enabled. When web control is disabled because the client proxy is present and redirecting, then the web control ignores the rating and enforcement actions, the web control browser controls are disabled, and the endpoint security client status page shows that the web control status as disabled, and the endpoint security client settings page indicates that the web control is disabled because a client proxy is detected. Why does a page load in the browser before the enforcement occurs? Web control does an asynchronous lookup for the rating on the web page. The browser content can load before the web control gets a rating from the global threat intelligence servers. See our KB article KB88057 for more information. The event logging options for the web control are as follows. You can log the web categories for green rated sites. This will log all the content categories that your end users have gone to that are green rated. Enabling this feature might negatively affect your EPO server performance by sending you way too many events that has to do with these allowed sites. Your other option, which is selected by default, is long events for allowed sites that are configured in the block and allow list. This will log the events that you have for the sites that are specified in your block and allow list policy. The log web control iframe events logs when a malicious website has been accessed or the warn yellow site has been accessed, and they appear in your HTML iframe and they are blocked. The send browser pane views and download to web reporter increase network traffic. This will apply only if you have the web reporter installed and configured. This will increase your network traffic if you have this enabled. The web reporter is a separate product that you can buy and deploy separately. The action enforcement options are: apply this action to sites not yet verified by Mcafee GTI. So this will specify what is the default action you want to apply if the Mcafee GTI has not yet rated it. You can select Allow, which is the default, and it permits the users to access the site. Warn is where it will display a warning message about the potential dangers. The user can dismiss this warning and then they can continue on to the site. Block will prevent the users from accessing the site, and they will get a message that the site is being blocked. The Enable HTML iframe support will block access to any malicious red sites or warned sites that are yellow that appear in the HTML iframe that is enabled by default. Block sites if the Mcafee GTI rating server is not reachable. That will block sites to websites by default if it cannot reach our GTI server. Block the phishing pages for all sites. If you have a phishing page, it will actually block it. It will override any content ratings actions. Allow warn action at the domain level. Web control will not generate any warnings within the same domain. So this will display a warning for any parent URL, but not for any of the subdomains. This again only applies to Windows. Enable observe mode. You will have where the events will be generated, but the policy is not actually enforced. The idea is this is a good way to actually have where you can see all the different types of activity as to where your users are visiting and all the different types of file downloads, but you're not going to be blocking anything. It does not enforce the policy. Enable this file scanning for the file downloads. Will scan any types of files that have a .zip file, a .exe, a .ecx, .cab, .msi, .rar, .scrn.com before they're actually downloaded. This is enabled by default. If you recall, Web Control will do a GTI lookup. If GTI allows the file, then Web Control sends that file to the threat prevention for scanning. If it is detected as a threat, then ENS will take the action and alert the user. This access to a downloaded file is only available if it's clean. Then we also have the GTI sensitivity level. This is where we specify the Mcafee GTI sensitivity level that Web Control will use for the file download scans. The options are very low, low, medium, high, or very high. And very high is the default. The email annotations. These options by default are enabled. And what it does is it will put any annotations in any browser-based email, and also you have it where it can be in a non-browser-based email. What causes no annotations to actually show up in your search results when you do perform the search with a supported engine is the fact that Web Control uses scripts to annotate the search results with ratings. If a search engine makes changes to the web page it uses to present the search engine results, the Web Control might not be able to annotate the page. For more information, look at the KB article KB 87640. For an example, if you went to www.yahoo.tw, it does not currently display search annotations with the Web Control for this reason. We have for the exclusions where I can specify IP addresses that I do not want any ratings. Be sure to separate the multiple entries with a comma or a carriage return. Or you can add an exclusion for all or specific IP addresses. Private IP addresses are excluded by default. How does Web Control determine whether a site has a private or an internal IP address? Web Control does not take action on private or internal IP addresses. Any private or internal site on a prohibit list are not blocked. Web Control determines that a site has a private/internal IP address if it's a part of the following IP address ranges. You have the 10.0.0.0 to 10.255.255.255. You also have the 172.16.00 to the 172.31.255.255, and then the 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255.255, or it's a local host, or it's the loopback IP address of 127.0.0.1. The secure search, you can enable the secure search window, which has to do with automatically blocking malicious sites in the search results based on a safety rating. You can set the default search engine in supported browsers. You can click the drop-down and specify the default search engine to use for the supported browsers. The examples are Yahoo, Google, Bing, and Ask. You can select the option of block links to risky sites in the search results to prevent users from clicking links to risky sites in the search results. The block and allow list policy, this is where you can go in and set up what sites and patterns you want to block or allow. Click on the Block and Allow List tab to specify the sites and patterns to block or allow. You can select the advanced settings to specify the actions for the resources from the allowed sites and set the precedents for the blocked and allowed sites. The settings on the Block and Allowed List tab are as follows. You have the search, where I can specify a pattern to search for in the list. And if I select the search, I can see all the columns for the pattern in the search field. The web control will search all the sites, patterns, and comments in the list and show all the matches. You can do the test pattern, which will test the pattern for a match with a URL or a site pattern within the site column. And this will test whether or not specific sites or site patterns are already included in the block and allow list. The web control displays any site patterns that match your entry. If no site patterns are displayed, the list allows access to the specific URL. For example, when a block or allow list is implemented in a multiple instance policy, use the test pattern to test the resulting effective policy. Clear obviously removes the pattern from the search list. The site will indicate the URLs, the sites, or the site patterns that are in the block or allow list. Your action will indicate what action do you want. Are you going to allow it, where they can access the sites on their computers using this policy, or block where the users cannot access this site on their computers using this policy? I can add a site, and adding the site is where I can also specify the action to apply to that site pattern, where we can allow or block. The site patterns just specifies the list of sites to block or allow. If you want to have multiple sites, put a comment in the list or enter each site on a separate line. You can edit your site pattern, so you can go in and allow or block, or specify the site pattern to allow or block. Click Advanced Settings to specify the actions for resources from allowed sites and precedents for the blocked and allowed sites. An allowed site with an overall rating of green can contain individual downloadable files that are rated yellow or red. To protect users, specify an action that is specific to the rating for an individual file. Set your action precedents. By default, when a site is set to both allow and block, the block action will always take precedence and the site is blocked. By selecting this option, you override the default behavior and make sure that users can access allowed sites even if they are also blocked. Caution! Be very careful when you select this option. Make sure that your allowed sites are safe so that client systems remain protected from web-based threats. The block and allow list policy is what we call a multiple instance policy. This means you can actually assign more than one instances of this policy in the system tree. Basically, it results in one combined effective policy. If you were to have a site that was listed as allowed and that same site was listed as blocked, always remember the block action will take precedence. If you want to look, there is a button that you can go in and click that says View Effective Policy, and we also have a View Effective Policy link that you can see details of the combined policy instance. The Content Actions policy defines the actions to take for rated sites in the web content categories. We have in the policy catalog, again, the Mcafee default that is read-only and the My Default, which you can edit. In configuring the Content Actions policy, you can click the drop-down and select what action you want specified for the rating of your different sites when it's red, yellow, or unrated. You have block, warn, and allow. The enable file scanning for file downloads must be enabled in the options policy to support the rating actions for the downloads feature of this particular policy. We also have the rating actions for when you select the enable file scanning for file downloads is enabled. Once again, you have the block for red, warn for yellow as the default, and allow for the unrated. If you want to make any changes, just click the drop down and change it from block or warn or allow. In the web control product, we can actually go in and block end users from going to certain websites having to do with the actual category of that particular site. So, of the Content Actions policy, click the Show Advanced button and you can configure the web category blocking. This feature is enabled by default, and you can block or unblock all of the categories or just specific categories. The Content Actions policy is also a multiple instance policy. So by default, if the same site appears in both the blocked and allowed, just realize the blocked action will take precedence. So you can configure your policy option for any of the allowed sites to take a priority. Just understand you can always assign more than one policy instance to a particular client. If I need to see what is the effective policy, you can click on the effective policy link or the view effective policy button to view the details of your combined policy instances. The enforcement messaging policy is where you can customize the messages and explanations that display when the end user opens up their browser. You can set the explanation for the sites that are blocked by the web category blocking, which can be up to 1,000 characters. You can actually set the messages and explanations for any of the site downloads that are blocked. You can define your messages for sites when the Mcafee GTI is unreachable. You can also set the messages for any unverified sites, and you can change the image that you want to use for your warning and blocking of the pages. And these can be a GIF, a JPEG, or a PNG file. In this screen, you'll see an example of what you could do for the site and the site downloads in your messaging blocking. You'll see any other messages and any other explanation options will have a similar configuration. You can click the Show Advanced to see any of the additional options. Additional examples are shown in this screen, so you can see where I can specify all the different messages and the explanation if I want to. Otherwise, you can go with the default that we have in this policy. And at the bottom, you can click to specify what is your custom image that you want for it to display when it warns or blocks the pages. The browser control policy is where I can block the use of specified browsers on my client system, where I can say you cannot use any unsupported browsers, and I can also block the use of a specified browser. In configuring the browser control policy, by default, all of your browsers are allowed. So I can select which ones that I want to block that has to do with the unsupported browsers. If you'll notice, there's Edge. And then I can also block the use of these supported browsers in the bottom where you have Internet Explorer, Firefox, or Chrome. The understanding that you do need to make sure that you do have enabled, and the self-protection must be enabled in the Common Options policy of ENS. Check your understanding, true or false. Color-coded safety ratings are available while browsing and while searching. Apply to your HTTP and HTTPS URLs only. Is this true or is it false? The answer is that it is true. Check your understanding, true or false. The threat prevention module is required for automatic scanning of downloaded files. The answer is true. If you recall, we talked about this earlier, that you actually have to have the threat prevention module installed so that it will do the automatic scanning of all your downloaded files. The key points to remember is that the web control product supports automatic scanning of downloadable files through integration with threat prevention. It provides the color-coded safety ratings while browsing and while searching HTTP and HTTPS. It also provides links to site details for more information about the threats, and it includes these types of web control policies. You have the options policy, the block and allow list policy, the content actions policy, the enforcement messaging policy, and the browser control policies.